Put it down. Right now. My voice came out so low and so flat that my husband froze with his hand still on the zipper. He looked at me. I looked at the bag. Neither of us moved for what felt like a full minute. Joanne. He said my name the way he does when he thinks I'm overreacting. 31 years of marriage and I know every tone he has. I said, put it down, Harold. Don't touch anything else in that bag. He let go. I stood there in the middle of our guest bedroom, the same room where our granddaughter had slept just the night before, staring at what I had just found tucked inside a rolled-up fleece jacket at the bottom of a duffel bag. Plastic, wrapped tight. More than one package. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew the way you know when something is terribly, terribly wrong even before your brain catches up with your gut. That bag belonged to my son-in-law, and we had been 40 minutes from the airport. I need to go back a little, because none of this makes sense without the years that came before it, and I want you to understand, I'm not telling this story to make myself look good. I made mistakes, real ones, the kind that take a long time to admit because admitting them means admitting you were blind to things you should have seen. My daughter Meredith is 41 years old. She's smart, funny, stubborn in a way that used to drive me absolutely crazy when she was a teenager, and now I just see as her greatest strength. She married Craig 11 years ago. I liked Craig at first. He was charming in that easy, effortless way, the kind of man who remembers your coffee order and makes you feel like the most important person in the room. My husband Harold was more cautious. He said once, not long after the wedding, "That man works very hard at being likable." I told him he was being unfair. I should have listened. The financial troubles started about 4 years into their marriage. Craig had been working in commercial real estate, and when the market softened in their area, he lost a major client, then another. He came to us, not Meredith, Craig, and explained the situation calmly, professionally, like he was presenting a business proposal. They needed help covering their mortgage for a few months while he got back on his feet. $3,000 a month. Temporary. Harold and I had worked our whole lives. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. We had savings. We had a paid-off house in Tucson. Harold had retired from 30 years in civil engineering, and I had spent 2 decades as an office administrator for a medical group before I retired. We helped because we could, and because Meredith was our only child, and because we adored our granddaughter Lily, who was 5 at the time and had nothing to do with any of it. 3 months turned into 8. Then Craig had a new venture, a property management startup with a friend. He needed seed money. Just a loan, he said. He'd pay it back with interest. $20,000. Harold said no initially. I pushed back on Harold. I said we had the money sitting there. Meredith needed stability. Lily needed stability. We gave it to them. That was 4 years ago. We have not seen a cent of it back. After that, it became a rhythm. I'm ashamed to write out how predictable it became. Looking back. Every 4 to 6 months, a new crisis. Craig's venture wasn't generating revenue yet. Meredith had cut back her hours at work because Lily needed her. Could we help with the car payment? The private school tuition for Lily was coming up. $14,000 for the year, and they were a little short. Not the whole amount, just the gap. I want to be honest about something. Meredith never asked me herself. Not once. It was always Craig who came to us. Meredith would be in the room, sometimes, but quiet, nodding, looking at the table. I told myself she was embarrassed. I told myself this was hard for her too. I made excuses for the woman I had raised because it hurt too much to look directly at what was in front of me. Harold grew quieter about it as the years went on. He didn't argue with me the way he had at the beginning. He just got quiet. I thought he was resigned. I didn't understand until much later that he was scared. Not of losing money, of losing me, of watching me disappear into someone else's mead and not being able to pull me back. By year 3 of this pattern, we had given or lent. And let's be honest, at that point the line between those two words was completely gone, close to $60,000. Craig drove a leased BMW. Lily was in private school. Meredith had stopped working entirely. They took a trip to Cabo for their anniversary and posted pictures on social media. When I mentioned the pictures to Meredith, gently, she said Craig had gotten a good deal. I didn't bring it up again. The breaking point, or what should have been the breaking point, came about 8 months before everything fell apart. Craig called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Harold was out playing golf. Craig said he needed to talk to me privately, which should have been the first alarm. He said he had a business opportunity. A friend of his, a contact from the real estate days, was moving some assets between Arizona and California. He needed a couple to transport some documents and a package. Nothing complicated. They'd cover our gas, put us up in a hotel, give us $500 for the trip. A favor, really. I said that sounded unusual. He laughed. He said it was just how business got done sometimes. Old school, you know how it is. He said the friend didn't trust wire transfers. I said I'd have to think about it. He said, great, no rush. I didn't tell Harold about that call for 2 weeks. I'm still not entirely sure why. Part of me knew that if I told Harold, he'd say no immediately, and part of me was still, even then, trying to protect Craig in my own mind, trying to find a version of events where this was fine. I finally told Harold on a Sunday morning over coffee. I remember exactly where I was sitting. Harold put his mug down and looked at me without saying anything for a long moment. He asked us to transport something for someone we don't know, Harold said. He said documents and a package. Yes. Harold stood up, refilled his coffee, and said, we're not doing that. I said I knew. I called Craig and told him we couldn't help. He was gracious about it. Too gracious. He said he understood completely. No problem at all. And he immediately changed the subject to Lily's upcoming school play. I put it out of my mind. I wish I hadn't. The trip to San Diego had been Meredith's idea. Or I thought it was. She called in early spring and said she wanted us to come visit. They'd rented a house near the beach for a long weekend and wanted the whole family together. Lily was 8 now and obsessed with tide pools. Harold had been tired, a little run down, and I thought the ocean air would do him good. I said yes without hesitating. I felt good about it. I remember feeling genuinely, uncomplicated good about it. The drive from Tucson to San Diego is about 6.5 hours if you don't rush. Harold and I packed a small suitcase, put our bags in the trunk, and started out on a Friday morning. The desert was beautiful that time of year. We had the radio on low. We stopped for gas and bad coffee just past Yuma. Everything was fine. We were somewhere outside El Centro, maybe 40 minutes from the California border, when Harold said he thought he'd left his blood pressure medication on the kitchen counter. He wasn't sure. He thought he packed it but couldn't remember. He asked if I checked the overnight bag, the smaller one, the gray one we put in the back seat. I unzipped the bag. Harold's medication was there, right on top, but underneath it, pushed to the side, wedged behind a toiletry kit that I recognized as Craig's, the brown leather one he'd left at our house last Thanksgiving, and I had packed intending to return it, were 2 packages. Plastic wrapped, taped tight. Heavier than they should have been. The shape was wrong. The weight was wrong. Everything about them was wrong. I didn't scream. I want to be clear about that because in my memory of the moment I am extremely calm, which I think is what happens when your brain is trying to protect you from something it isn't ready to understand. I set the bag down very carefully on my lap. Harold, I said. He heard something in my voice. What's wrong? Look at this. He glanced over. He couldn't see properly while driving. He said, what is it? I don't know. But it's not ours. We were quiet for a moment. The highway stretched out flat and straight in front of us. Craig packed that toiletry kit, I said. Harold didn't say anything. Harold. Craig packed that bag. He came over Thursday evening to help us load the car, remember? He carried the bags out. He said he wanted to help. Harold's hands tightened on the wheel. I thought about the call from 2 years before. The favor. The documents in the package. I thought about how gracious Craig had been when we said no. I thought about how he had shown up at our house the evening before this trip, smiling, hugging Lily in the driveway, carrying our bags to the car for us, being helpful, being charming. Turn around, I said. Joanne, Harold, turn around right now, please. He was quiet for another few seconds. Then he put on the turn signal, moved to the right lane, took the next exit, and pulled into a gas station parking lot. He put the car in park. We sat there for a moment in the heat and the silence and the sound of a truck engine somewhere behind us. We could be carrying drugs, I said. It was the first time I had said the word out loud. We could be 40 minutes from a federal border inspection with drugs in our car. Harold put his hands flat on his thighs. We have to call someone, he said. I know. Not Craig. I know. We called our attorney first. I had his cell number saved from when we'd updated our wills 2 years ago. He picked up on the 3rd ring. I explained what we had found, where we were, what we knew about how the bags had been loaded. He told us not to touch the packages further, not to drive anywhere, and to call the San Diego County Sheriff's non-emergency line to report it. He said he would start driving to meet us and told us to text him the exact address of the gas station. I texted him the address of the gas station. Then Harold called the non-emergency line. And then while we waited, I called Meredith. She answered on the second ring, bright and cheerful. "Mom, are you guys almost here?" I said, "Meredith, I need you to listen to me carefully." The brightness went out of her voice immediately. "What happened? Is Dad okay?" "Your father is fine. We're both fine." "Meredith, we found packages in our bag. Packages we didn't pack. I think Craig put them there when he loaded the car last night." Silence. "Meredith, Mom, I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you might," I said. "I'm not going to argue about it right now. I am telling you that we are not coming. I am telling you that we have already called our attorney and we are calling the authorities. And I am telling you that whatever Craig has done, your father and I are not going to be the ones who pay for it." She started crying. I sat with that for a moment and let myself feel how much it hurt, because it hurt tremendously. And then I said, "I love you. I'll call you when I know more." And I hung up. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. They confirmed what I already knew I knew. I won't go into every detail of what followed that afternoon. The hours in that parking lot, the questions, the phone calls, the particular feeling of sitting in a plastic chair inside a gas station convenience store while your entire understanding of the last 4 years rearranges itself. But I will say that Harold held my hand almost the entire time, and that our attorney was there within 90 minutes, and that we were not charged with anything. Craig was arrested the following morning. The packages contained methamphetamine. Significant quantities, our attorney told us later. The kind that carries federal trafficking charges, not just possession. It turned out this had not been the first time. Craig had been moving product for someone for over a year. He had used his own car twice, but had apparently become nervous about it. He had been looking for a way to create distance between himself and the transport. 2 retired people driving a personal vehicle were, evidently, the perfect solution. He had been planning this trip for months. The beach house rental had been his idea, not Meredith's. She told me this herself later, on the phone, crying so hard I could barely understand her. She said he'd told her it was a family trip. She hadn't known about the packages. I believe her, not because I am naive. I spent a long time not believing things I should have believed, but because I know my daughter, and I know what fear looks like when it's been living in someone's body for years. The divorce was final 8 months later. Meredith and Lily moved into a small rental house in Tucson, about 12 minutes from us. We helped her with the security deposit and first month's rent, and that was a different thing entirely from everything that came before it, because she asked for herself, because it was honest, and because I knew exactly where the money was going. She went back to work. Lily started at a public school with a very good reputation and an art teacher she loves. Harold has opinions about Craig that he does not share with me in detail, which I appreciate. He says what he needs to say once and then he is done. I have always admired that about him. He was right about Craig from the beginning, and he has never once reminded me of that. Lily is 9 now. She sits at our kitchen table on Sunday mornings and does her homework, while Harold reads the paper and I make eggs. She asked me once, carefully, why her dad wasn't around anymore. I told her that sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people around them, and that none of it was her fault, and that she was the most loved person in our house. She accepted that. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for, and more perceptive. She knew something had been wrong long before we did. I think about the woman I was 4 years ago, the one who handed over $20,000 and told her husband he was being unfair. I think about the months of excuses I made, the phone calls I accepted at face value, the social media photos I scrolled past without letting myself feel what they made me feel. I was so afraid of being the mother who withheld, who was cold, who let money come between her and her child. I had seen families fracture over money, and I had always thought, I will never be that family. I will be generous. I will be the kind of mother who shows up. What I didn't understand then, what I understand now in a way that is settled somewhere permanent in my chest, is that showing up doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It means being present enough to see what's actually happening. It means trusting your instincts when something feels wrong, even when the person asking you to ignore them is someone you love. I trusted my instincts on that highway outside El Centro, 40 minutes from a federal border crossing. With my retired husband at the wheel and drugs in our overnight bag, I finally stopped making excuses. I only wish I had trusted myself 4 years earlier. Craig is awaiting trial. I don't follow the details closely. Our attorney updates us when there's something we need to know. The rest of it, the case, the outcome, whatever happens next, is not my story anymore. It belongs to the courts, and to Craig, and to whatever version of accountability he will eventually have to face. My story is the Sunday morning eggs, the homework at the kitchen table, the 12-minute drive to Meredith's house when she calls and says she needs company, the slow, patient work of rebuilding something that was damaged, not all at once but over years. One small compromise at a time. That's the part they don't tell you about setting boundaries late. Everyone talks about the dramatic moment. The car pulled over on the highway, the call to the attorney, the arrest. And yes, that moment was real and it was terrifying, and I am grateful every day that Harold listened to my voice and took that exit. But the harder part, the quieter part, is what comes after. Sitting with the knowledge of how long you let things go. Forgiving yourself for not seeing sooner. Learning to trust your own judgment again when you spent years overriding it. Harold and I still take road trips. Just last month we drove up to Sedona for a long weekend. We packed our own bags. We checked them ourselves. When we pulled onto the highway and the red rocks came into view and the morning was clear and cold, Harold reached over and put his hand on mine, the same way he did in that gas station parking lot. And we didn't say anything because we didn't need to. Some things you carry with you. Some things you leave on the side of the road, in a place called El Centro on a hot spring afternoon, when you finally decide that your life belongs to you. That's my story. And if it sounds familiar, if some part of what I've described is something you're living right now, quietly alone, I want you to know that it is never too late to trust what you know to be true. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since that afternoon on the highway outside El Centro. Not in any mystical sense, just in the plain, honest way that life eventually forces you to look at the chain of choices that led you somewhere you never expected to be. Every time I said yes when I should have said wait. Every time I handed over money because the discomfort of saying no felt worse than the discomfort of being taken advantage of. Every time I explained away a red flag because explaining it away was easier than facing what it meant. Those weren't isolated moments. They were a pattern. And patterns, if you let them run long enough, become a road. And that road, in our case, led to a gas station parking lot in the desert with 2 packages of methamphetamine in our overnight bag and a federal charge 40 minutes away. That's the cause and effect nobody talks about when they talk about being a generous parent. The conversation is always about love, about family, about showing up. And those things are real. I don't dismiss them. But love without judgment isn't virtue, it's just fear with a prettier name. I was afraid of being the cold mother, the withholding grandmother, the one who let money poison a relationship. And that fear made me useful to someone who knew exactly how to use it. Craig knew. I understand that now. The charm, the business proposals, the way he always came to me instead of Harold, none of that was accidental. He had mapped my weaknesses before I had even thought to look at them myself. That's not something I say to excuse myself. I'm the one who handed him the map. What I want to say, if any part of this lands with you, is that intelligence in these situations isn't about being smarter than the person manipulating you. Craig was not a genius. He was just paying closer attention to my patterns than I was. Wisdom, real wisdom, the kind that actually protects you, is about being willing to look at your own behavior honestly, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. I wasn't willing to do that for 4 years. The moment I finally was, sitting in that car with a bag on my lap that told me everything I had been refusing to see, I made the right call in about 30 seconds. The information was never the problem. My willingness to receive it was. And then there's what came after, because setting a boundary once, in a dramatic moment on a highway, is the easy part. Or at least the clear part. The harder thing is rebuilding your own judgment. Learning to trust yourself again when you spent years overriding what you knew to be true. Meredith and I are closer now than we were during any of those 5 years of Craig's manufactured crises. Not because everything is fixed. Because what's between us now is honest. She shows up as herself. I show up as myself. That took courage from both of us. The quiet, unglamorous kind that doesn't make for a dramatic story but is the only kind that actually holds. Lily sat at my kitchen table last Sunday and told me her art teacher said she had a good eye. Harold looked up from his paper and said, "She gets that from her grandmother." I don't know if that's true, but I know that the life she's growing up in now, stable, honest, grounded, is one we almost lost, and that the only reason we didn't is because one afternoon on a flat stretch of desert highway, I finally stopped being afraid of what I already knew. That's what I carry with me, not the betrayal, not the years of money handed over to someone who was counting on my willingness to look the other way. I carry the moment I stopped, because it taught me something I should have learned much earlier. Your instincts are not the enemy of love. They are part of it. The most important part.